will you need for this project? You will need your yarn, you will need stitch markers, removable ones, coconuts will do, or if you have these will be great. These are the removable ones. They're great to use for beginning of the round stitch markers, also to mark the short rows. I use a lot of those to remind me where I need to turn. You will need numbered stitch markers 1 through 4. This is point of reference, so you're not lost and you know where to shape the neckline, where to increase for the sleeves, and where to work the sleeves. You will need a tapestry needle. You will need a crochet hook, just in case, you never know. You will need 2 sizes of needles. You don't need to have a set. I happen to have, and I will be working with Luca and Lantern Moon interchangeably. So Luca, I have the short tips here, and I will be using, according to my pattern and my gauge, size 4 millimeter, size 6 US, and size 9 or 5.5 millimeter. Smaller circumferences will be worked with the shorter tips, and magic loop, larger circumferences will be worked with a 5-inch tip. So this set is missing the 9, but I have the 9s in the other set. I'm just showing you this. And then you will either use, you need different lengths of cables. These are the new Lantern Moon. They are similar to Chegu's red cables, swivel. So that's the difference, but they fit Luca perfectly, and of course they would fit the Lantern Moon. You will need them in different sizes, smaller one for small circumferences, and then you will need 2 47-inch at least for the sleeve work, and then 24 or something like that for the body. Also, you might need the barber cords. Sometimes I use them to just transfer the stitches and to try the garment on. Or if you don't have enough needles or cables, you can hold the back sleeve stitches on the cords. And it's easy to work with them. Just hook them up to the needle and slide the stitches. And you will need a few stoppers for the cables if you use those instead of the barber cords. And that's basically what you will need. So let's start working on this one. All right, let's start. We're going to start with the long tail cast on. I need a shorter cable, needles, size 9, 5.5 millimeter, and 2 stitch markers. One removable one, definitely, to mark the first stitch of the round at the cast on line, because it's a folded neckline trim, and the other one, removable or not, a distinct stitch marker for the beginning of the round. I do use technique where I have a seamless jogless join when starting to work in a round, so I always cast on 1 additional stitch. It's not in a pattern, but it's here. When you cast on, try to cast on slightly loosely. I'll show you. Have a little space between the stitches. So the first thing that I do, I never start with the slip stitch. Slip stitch. Oh my gosh. Okay. I always just twist the yarn around the needle like that. I never start with the slip knot, ever. Basically. Very rarely if I need it for neckline, but never ever in a round. So this is how I start. This is my first stitch, and I will cast on the necessary amount of stitches identified in a pattern plus 1. And I will show you what I do here. I do have a video on that if you would like to watch it. So let's start. So when you cast on, just leave a little bit of a space. Don't cast on too tightly here, because this will be our future seam at the neckline. It'll be easier for you. So space it out, something like that. Not too tight, not too much space, just a little bit of space. Like that. Keep going like that until you have the amount of stitches that you need for the neckline, and I'll come back and show you how I join it. I've casted the necessary amount of stitches, and now I'm ready to join the work in a round. First thing first, you see this first stitch here that we will reduce Actually, let's do it first. All right, make sure both yarns, the end, I have slightly longer end, but make sure they're both at the back of the work. Make sure your stitches are not twisted, and they're not. And now what you need to do is slip the first stitch of the left needle onto the right needle, purlwise, like that. What we need to do now is basically wrap this stitch around this stitch. It would have probably been easier on the left needle, actually. Let's try that. So slip the stitch off of the right needle onto the left needle, like that, and slip the second stitch at this point on your left needle over the first, like that. So we're going in the same direction. We just created the seamless join for working around. Slip the first stitch of the left needle onto the right needle, and we're ready to start our work. But first thing first, what we need to do is to place the removable stitch marker onto this first stitch, so we know which stitch to join with the last stitch of the neckline. So you can just place it like over, like that, and lock it. So that's done. And now place your beginning of the round marker and start working around. Make sure the tail of the working yarn is placed over, the tail of the end is placed over the working yarn. There we go. All right, and the first round we're working 1 by 1 rib, knit 1 stitch, purl 1 stitch. I'm not used to working very much with wooden needles, so bear with me, but I do use them for the videos because they create less annoying sound. All right, here we go. So go to the pattern, check for how many rounds you need to work the neckline trim, and then I will continue working like that, and I will come back and show you how to do the permanent fold for the neckline, and I will explain why we need it. It just gives more structure. So there it is. This is my beginning of the first round in 1 by 1 rib, and I'm going to go for as many rounds as my pattern tells me to do so. And I'll come back and show you the permanent fold. Originally, I worked the trim with smaller size needles, but the transition from the trim to the body created longer elongated stitches at the short row turns. So I decided to just work with the same size needles for the neckline trim and the body, and then move on to the smaller size needles for the trim at the bottom and the sleeve trim. So because of that, we need some more structure at the fold, so it doesn't stretch out over time, because this will be stretched out. So don't look at it right now the way it is. It'll actually stretch out. And because we will join the live stitches with this in a certain way, the cast on line will create that seam. I'll show it to you when we're ready. So what do we need to do now? Right now I'll show you for 3 rounds you will be working the permanent fold. How do we do that? And why do we do that? It will create the structure, and because there will be slip stitches, so we will knit the knit stitches and we will slip the purl stitches with the yarn in front. And because of that shorter float of the yarn, it will create a stable environment here at the fold. So the neckline will never stretch, will never just gape. It will fit better. All right, knit, slip your stitch marker, beginning of the round stitch marker. I switched it. I like this one, so I switched to this one. Knit stitches, bring the yarn to the front, slip purl stitches purlwise with the yarn in front, knit the knit stitch. My purl stitches are turned, turned meaning the right leg of the stitch is at the back of the needle, the left leg of the stitch is at the front of the needle, just because of the way I purl. I purl this way, and you see the stitches are already turned, versus this way when the stitch is positioned the correct way on the needles. So that's why I need to turn them. If you purl the same way, just turn them. So slip the purl stitch purlwise with the yarn in front, bring the yarn back, and knit the knit stitch. And keep doing this until you reach the beginning of the round marker, and then do it 2 more times. So 3 rounds total. All right, so that's what we're doing. And then after that, we will continue working in 1 by 1 rib, but not as many rounds, 1 round less than what we did here, and then we'll join it. Okay, checking in. I've worked the first part of the neckline trim, and then the permanent fold. This is what it looks like. It's just not going to stretch as much as the base. And then I worked 1 less round than this part for the fold. So what we're going to do right now is we're going to turn work, and we're going to work in the opposite direction, and I will show you why. It's just the way that I like it. Don't look at that the neckline, this neckline trim is kind of smallish. It's not, it will stretch. And this is why we need extra seam here, and this is why we need the fold here to give us structure, because the stitches are so big for this yarn that it just will stretch out. So we'll give it more structure. But this is better approach than working with smaller needles, than switching to larger needles and having little elongated stitches where you don't want them. All right, turn work. And now what we're going to do is we're going to fold it. So this is the wrong side of the fold. This is where the stitch was slipped. It's elongated a little bit, and the extra fabric created here when we worked the knit stitches. Okay, so leave the beginning of the round marker on what used to be left needle. Now we're going to turn it, and it becomes our right needle, and this is our left one. The yarn is attached to the left one. Don't worry about it. We'll just we'll manage it. So this is why we needed the stitch marker here. I know that this is my first stitch. What I am going to do, you might need a crochet hook here. It doesn't matter if it's the same size or a little smaller. A little smaller will be easier to manage. We're not going to work with the yarn. So right now the stitches will be just pulled through without working them, without knitting them or purling them. We're not going to work stitches. So fold your neckline trim at the fold line. See where the first stitch is. Remove this marker for now, actually, because you will come to this point. It's just going to dangle there. Actually, no. Let's just put it on, because I'm using this and I'm thinking, all right, we're not gonna, yeah, we do need it. All right, so this is our first stitch that we marked. This is the cast on line, right? These are the stitches under the cast on line. So what I'm talking about is this stitch that we marked, our first stitch right here. You can even put it through this one. It doesn't matter, it'll just create a little sturdier line, but make sure it's all in one row. So whether you choose, let me spread them out a little bit, okay? Whether you choose the stitch directly under the bind off or even one stitch below, it's still gonna be okay, but make sure you just keep it all in one row. I will be working with these stitches right here, right under the bind off. Although it will seem that it's easier to just push it through this, to insert the needle into this, which is okay. Why do we work in the opposite direction? When you fold it, I like how, so this will be the right side, this will be the wrong side. I like how this, the first part that we worked, looks better than the other one. It's just that the way the stitches are arranged, it creates little holes there, so I like the look of this better. Just better overall finished look. That's why we're turning work and making this our right side. All right, so now that's all that covered. Let's move on. What will do, and try it with the needle, try it with a crochet hook and see what works better for you. I am going to insert the needle. Let's just do this. Maybe this will be just easier to show. I'm going to insert the needle into, so I'll be working with the second row from the cast on. This stitch right here, this. So insert your crochet hook or needle, this one, into the stitch from the front to back under the cast on line. Grab the first stitch off of the left needle purlwise, and pull it through. If you're working with crochet hook, remember to just place it on the needle, on the right hand needle. At this point, I will remove this stitch marker. I'm not going to need it anymore. And keep going like that. So if it's easier for you to work with the needle, this is the first row, I'm working with the second. So to stay in at the same, in the same row, I'm inserting my needle into second row, into the stitch from the front to the back, grabbing the first stitch off the left needle and pulling it through. See what I mean? Sometimes it's just easier to work with crochet hook. And keep going like that. So this is my next stitch right here. First row, I would have inserted it here. Second, slip the stitch off of the left needle purlwise and pull it through to the front of the work. So this is what we're going to be doing. If you prefer to work with a crochet hook, make sure the stitches are not slipping off. If first, second, that's what I'm working with, but see what you like better, and I will show you what it creates. Pull it through, place it on a needle, work the next stitch. This is my next stitch right here. Grab this stitch purlwise. My stitches are turned again. I explained why a million times. This is just the way I purl. And pull it through. Place it on a needle. All right. I'm working with a camera, so it's slightly different for me. Again, we're not knitting those. So what do we have here? We are creating that line, that little chain here. It's best like right here. This one is just slightly elongated stitch, but we will create that pretty rigid. So this will not stretch. This stretches out, but this creates that seam that we are after without binding off, picking up stitches the way I normally would do it. But that's what it is. So this is how it's gonna look, and it will stretch. Don't be fooled. This will stretch, but the seam will hold it, and the permanent fold will hold it at the neckline without stretching out and just gaping. You know what I mean? So that's what it is. Keep on working like that until the beginning of the round stitch, when you will join the last two stitches, and then we'll start working on the body of the sweater. I decided to pop in for a second as I was working it to show you that the stitches get tighter. Don't fret it, just move it along. They will get tighter, but keep working on it. Just keep inserting the needle and getting it through to the front. And yes, it will be slightly tighter because we're creating this seam, see, and that will give it good structure and stability at the neckline. So keep working like that, and just shuffle the stitches, just wiggle them a little bit, and you'll be fine. We're done joining the stitches, and this is our neckline trim, and we're ready to transition to the body of the sweater. At this point, we will have to slip the stitches and divide them into half, front and back. What do we need for this? We will need needles. I have these, but I will need another set, so I am getting the size 9 Luca. That I will connect them to the lantern moon cables. You can find them on Etsy, cheaper probably, or I'll link down below my source where I like to get these things. Fabulous Yarn has discounts and they sell these and lantern moon sets. These cables are great and they fit Luca. So they come like this with, so these swivel. And I like them for this sweater because they will spread the stitches really nicely. And I need two, front needle, back needle, or cable. That'll be that. Then I will need two stoppers because I will be using probably one set of needles and the other one will be held. The back one, the stitches will be held on a separate cable for now with stoppers. And then it has the tightening tool. You will also need numbered stitch markers. This is a good source. I will link the other sources in the comment box below. I just got these, so beautiful. She sends a little sticker, which I am a planner girl. I will use it, definitely. She sends you a little gift. Very nice, thank you. And so this is Studio Savile Crochet. I'll link it down below. These stitch markers are great. You will need 1 through 4 for this pattern, but if you plan to work on any more of my patterns, I would suggest you get a set because you will need at any given moment probably up to 8, maybe even more numbers. So these are removable ones, which is good for me because then I can switch it if I need to adjust the pattern. But these, I like them. The removable ones. You can remove them on the fly, add them on the fly, but for now we need number 1 through 2 for the front sleeve. So let me prep that. And also you might need, if you don't have 2 cables, something like that, you might want to put those stitches on the knitting barber cord. That. If you choose the knitting barber cord, I found that on Etsy, I'll link it down below. I found a shop that sells these things. She advertises them as the needle stoppers, just to put them on a needle. These are too large to fit in, but she has a video showing you how to put the needles through and keep your work there. But the way she sends them are on actually a cord, a dupe of the original one. But see, it actually holds it. The one drawback is I held it for a little bit longer, so it kind of squishes it, but it doesn't damage it really. And if you do it at the ends, you still can put it on your needle, you know. It's fine to slip the stitches through, and it will still hold. But you will keep your work safe because stitches slip, even from the cords. As grabby as they are, it still slips. So this is a really good solution. I'll link it down below. I really like it. I reached out to the girl and she said let me know if it works, but she never tried it, which I don't understand why. Great, really great. Love this. All right, you might need that. Okay, let's start. So what we need right now is, if you have 2 cables, attach a needle tip to one of the cables and attach the other one to the other cable. That's 1, ready to go, and that will be 2. Why do we need longer cables? Because we will cast on stitches, provisionally cast on stitches using my 2 cable cast on method, provisional cast on method, and you will have all of the stitches along with the neckline stitches on that one long cable. What do we do right now? So yes, I did slip that, remove that stitch marker, and I should have removed that marker because I didn't need it. And I know where beginning of the round is, where my working yarn is. And right now, when we reverse the work, right now it's not coming out of your right needle, but left needle. Okay, so what we need to do is, without working these stitches, we're going to slip half of the stitches onto the first needle. That'll be your front needle. And then, so you just slip them, you know? Don't work them, just slip them on. There it is. And then slip the other half on the other needle, on the back needle. I slipped half of the stitches onto the longer cable needle. Here you can actually have the shorter cable, but at some point you will have to still switch to the longer cable. So I would suggest you do it now. That is, if you ask, well, why don't we just leave it here because this is the right size needle? Wrong cable. You can just probably attach the cable here, that one, without slipping stitches off, you know what I mean? And just push the stitches onto the longer cable without like slipping them really. Or attach the barber cord here because you will need something longer, you know, and just slip the stitches onto the barber cord. But for now, you're not going to need the back, except for you will need the cable because the provisional cast on method that I use, you will still need this in order to have those live stitches held at the back. So whatever you use is fine as long as you will hold those stitches and you will have some kind of cable here to prep for provisional cast on for the right side and then for the left side. Stitches transferred onto front needle, back needle, and now I will disconnect this tip from the back needle because I needed it to transfer the stitches, and I will connect it to the front needle and tighten it up. All right, so I will put a stopper on this end. This is the left side, right side. I will put a stopper on the back needle of the left side, and I will do the same thing for the right one. But before I do that, to prep for the provisional cast on for the right sleeve, the point of reference are 2 stitch markers. Your front needle, where the working yarn is, right there. That's your front needle, and tighten it up too. Place stitch marker number 1 on the needle, like that. Place stitch marker number 2 on the back needle, like that. So there it is. Right now you will have point of reference. And then place your stopper onto the needle, the back needle. There we go. All right, and now we can begin work on the provisional cast on. This is the front needle, front needle or cable, back needle or cable. Stitch marker number 1, stitch marker number 2. You need to place your work so this needle will be at the top. So wrong side will be facing you. The tip of the needle will be to your left. Tighten up the yarn here, your working yarn. And now let's begin. You need a long enough cable here. I mean, I have it longer so I can pull it at any given point. But here's what you need. Hold your yarn just as if you were to use it for a long tail cast on. So the provisional cast on, the first stitch has to be wrapped around the top needle, the second around the cable. So let's do it. First stitch, grab it under. The yarn is in front of the cable here. So then with your needle tip, get behind the cable, grab the yarn from under and bring it to the top. This created 1 stitch on the cable, and now I have 2 stitches on the needle. The pattern will tell you the total amount of stitches to cast on both cables and or needles and on each one. You will need the smaller number because probably you will be counting how many stitches you cast on the needle itself. So keep on going. Needle in front of the cable. Grab the yarn from the bottom, bring it up. Needle tip behind the cable. Grab the yarn and bring it to the top. Cast on not too tight, not too loose. So you will be able to move the needle through, but not so the stitch is hanging out. Otherwise, you will have the stretched out stitch here when you will have the full ready to go sleeve. So keep on doing that. I will show you a few more stitches and I'll come back when I'll have all of my stitches and we'll start work on the top of the right sleeve. So again, tip of the needle in front of the cable, grab the yarn, bring it to the top, tip of the needle behind the cable, grab the yarn and bring it to the top, like that. and keep on working like that. Casting on the necessary amount of stitches. Necessary amount of stitches cast on. The last stitch will be wrapped around the cable. So when you cast on the last stitch here, the yarn will have to go underneath the cable when you turn work, and you will have to get ready for your first row. For the top of the right sleeve, we will be on the right side of the work, and the last stitch will be wrapped around the cable. So now we're ready to start on the first row. For a few number of rows, you will have to work straight, meaning there won't be a turn. The turn, not a short row turn, the turn we'll have to decrease the stitch, and then we will work our short rows to create the curve at the front of the neckline. So we're working in reverse stockinette stitch, meaning we will be purling all of the stitches to the stitch marker. Follow the direction in the pattern. It will tell you exactly what to do, but I'll guide you through here. So here's my needle. Let's start working on it. So the last stitch is wrapped around the cable. Oh my goodness. All right. I have to do everything through the viewfinder, so sometimes I can't see where the yarn really is. All right. So let's start working. I will show you a few stitches and then I'll come back when I will be close to the marker, number 1. Just keep purling. I've worked all of the stitches to the stitch marker number 1. At this point, what you need to do is bring the working yarn to the back of the work, remove the stitch marker, slip the first stitch off of the left needle purlwise, place the stitch marker number 1 back onto the left needle, bring the yarn to the front, turn work, and now we're going to work back to the beginning of the row. First thing here is we need to knit 2 stitches together, there, tighten it up, and then knit to the end of the row. And we'll repeat this instruction one more time for my size. Check for your size in the pattern, how many times you have to do this before you start shaping the curve of the front right side of the neckline. So I am working back, and I will perform this little maneuver one more time, and I'll come back and show you again how I do it. I just worked the full row and then back. So I am back at the stitch marker number 1. Bring the yarn back to the back of the work, remove the stitch marker number 1, slip the stitch off of the left needle purlwise onto the right needle, place the stitch marker back onto the left needle, bring the yarn to the front, turn your work. Knit 2 stitches together, tighten it up, and work back to the beginning of the row. From the next row, we'll start short row shaping of the right side of the front neckline. And I will show you what to do, but you will probably need some stitch markers to guide you through this process. Removable ones, anything colorful, anything that will let you know when you want to turn. So we started working on the top of the right sleeve. We had to work flat for a little bit, and that's what it is. At this point, we will start working on the right front neckline curve. Check how many stitches you need for the short row shaping there for your size. For my size, I have So the short row turn instructions are usually, they're generic, and they will be at the very end of the pattern with subtitle A, B, C. So those will be with letters. The other instructions for your neckline, for sleeves, and everything else will be numbered 1, 2, 3 throughout the pattern. So these are the generic instructions because I use them for left side, for right side, and then for back and for sleeves, they're identical for the front and for the back, and we'll be shaping the sleeves too using short rows. So for the front neckline, let me give you an example. For my size, it says turn every stitch 4 times, then every second stitch 3 times, meaning I need 7 stitches total. So I will mark that from here, from the stitch marker number 1 at this point, when we just removed 2 stitches off of the sides of this part of the neckline. So I am 1 stitch away from the stitch marker. So from the stitch marker, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, right? 7, I lie, 4, and then every 2 stitches 3 times, that will be 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. So there goes my where I stop work with my short rows, right? So because I have different instructions with 1 stitch and then 2 stitches, you can mark each stitch here for each turn, and then every 2 stitches you can mark it too. I know already where I have to stop, and it's pretty easy for me, so I will mark where I will have to switch from 1 stitch apart short rows to 2 stitches. So 1, 2, 3, these are my 4 stitches where I will have to turn every stitch. So there it is. So I will have 2 stitch markers. You can just go nuts and have another one here, and then every stitch here. So you're reminded this is where you have to stop, turn work, go back. Okay, let's start shaping the front neckline. And we will be turning, going back to the beginning of the row, coming back from the beginning of the row, and turning to the next stitch, working double stitch as we come to the next stitch, turning work, going back to the beginning of the row. These are the simple instructions here. So let's do it. I am working my last purl stitch here, slightly elongated. It's okay. You will have enough of the end of the yarn from the other side to kind of weave it in a little bit if it's too loose. But this is why I had to change instructions. So at this point, you will slip onto the right needle stitch marker number 1, and you will purl, because we're working in stockinette stitch, the first stitch. Tighten it up. Now turn work. This is your first turn. How do you work the short row here? Bring the yarn to the front. It'll be easier for you to do it. Insert the right needle tip into the stitch purlwise. The way I purl, my stitches are turned. So if you purl the right way, your stitch will be positioned this way, the right way on the needles, right? So I had to turn it. Insert your right needle tip into the stitch purlwise. Slip it off the left needle. Bring the yarn to the back of the work, tightening it up and creating the double stitch by pulling the stitch below onto the needle. So we just created the double stitch. You will easily notice them when you come back, but if you will have a stitch marker here, you will remove it as you go to the next one, so you know where to stop for the next time. So that's your first double stitch. Tighten it up a bit. It's easier to work with it when it's tightened up. Slip the stitch marker onto the right needle, and then you just knit back to the beginning of the row. I'm at the stitch marker number 1, and I'm ready to work my double stitch and make the next turn. So let's do it. Slip the stitch marker number 1. Now this is double stitch, right? Insert the needle into the double stitch and purl it. Tighten it up. Purl the next stitch, because right now we're working 1 stitch away instructions, and then turn work. Again, because of the way that I purl, it's faster, but my stitches are turned. So let me turn it back the way it should be, like that. So right now it's the same thing. you insert the needle into the stitch, slip it off of the left needle onto the right, bring the yarn back, and this is what happens. So you can see the stitch below. When we tighten it up, we bring that stitch from below, wrapping it around the right needle, creating the double stitch. Tighten it up, just make sure it's a little tighter. And work back to the beginning of the row, slipping the stitch marker number 1. So I'm at the next turn and I will show you that in a second, but what I noticed is that sometimes the rigid cables are not good for some things. Really great for knitting, not good for holding stitches. Why? Because as I work, it moves and it stretches out these stitches, meaning they will be slightly longer than the normal stitches here, and it will create that row with those elevated stretched out stitches. So what I'm going to do right now, not to stretch it more, because it just pulls on that row, and these will be smaller, these will seem larger. What I'm going to do is I'm going to remove the stopper. I will put any tip, any size, like smaller size than what you're working with, on the needles. And then I will take the knitting barber cord, place it on the needle. There we go. And I will pull it through. So the stitches are right now will be on more flexible, grabby material to hold it easily and not stretch it out because it's so rigid. Okay, let's try that. It's very easy. And just shuffle the stitches through it. Here we go. I'm not afraid, it's not going to just pull off of the needle. It sits pretty tightly there. This is why I love those cords so much. Here we go. Now it'll be much better. Okay. And now to hold it. So now we have that, and I will be able to try the sweater on as I'm working on the front, because it will be quite a while before I start working on the back. This is 60-inch one. To hold the stitches, right now it's not too many, but when I will have the second sleeve, it will be quite a few stitches there. So what I will do right now is I'm going to use this little thing that I thought about and put it on the cable, and that'll keep the stitches. And it's still long enough for me to try it on. So perfect. Good tip, good tip. Okay, now let's do this. We are 1 stitch away from the stitch marker. Let's purl it. Slip the stitch marker number 1 onto the right needle. Work the first stitch. That's a normal stitch. It used to be a double stitch, 1 row before this. Right? And then we're double stitch. So insert your needle into the double stitch, purl it, purl the next stitch. This is our next turn work. This is our wrong side. That's the seam that we're created. And now I'm not going to turn the stitch. I am just going to do it the way I normally do it because I'm used to my turned stitches. So I will insert it this way without even bringing the yarn to the front, already creating that double stitch. Slip it onto the needle, tighten it up. That's how I normally do it. So tighten it up and then knit back. And I will come back after this stitch marker. I will remove it, and I will be performing short to row turns every 2 stitches here. Slipped my stitch marker number 1 onto the right needle, working my 1 stitch away turns. This is the last one. This is the last double stitch before I will start performing 2 stitch turns. Why 1 stitch here? 1 stitch creates a steeper curve. Now we're transitioning to the 2. This is the stitch marker that let me know to switch to different instructions, and I am going to do that. So 2 stitches away, I will knit 1, or actually I will purl 1 after the double stitch, purl the second one, and on the second one I will turn. So every 2 stitches you turn. This will be a turning point, this will be a turning point. And I will work back, creating a double stitch, and then I will come back and show you what to do next. So double stitch, tighten it up, and work back. Simple. The right front side is shaping up nicely. This is our curve at the right front side. Now we have to move on to the left. Where am I at? I just worked all of the short rows. This was my last turn. The next row would be to purl to the double stitch, slipping stitch marker number 1. So this is what I'm doing. This is where I should stop my short rows. I did. I created the double stitch. Now I'm working that double stitch. I'm purling it, removing the stitch marker. What follows next? Now you will have to work to the left side. Check the pattern, how many stitches you have to work to this side, and then you will have to break the yarn and slip stitches, the rest of the stitches on the front needle, so you can easily start working on the left sleeve. You will provisionally cast on stitches there. All right, so let me work to that stitch where I will have to break the yarn. And this will be the flat part of the front neckline. The stitches are pretty tight here because we pulled them through from the cast on, from the live stitches where we performed the join of the cast on line with the live stitches. So I've just worked that flat part and the number of stitches identified in the pattern. At this point, I will break the yarn and I will slip the rest of the stitches. Actually, let me just do that because it will be more stable. The rest of the stitches, don't work them, just slip them purlwise onto the right needle from the left needle. And we will be ready to then cast on, provisionally cast on for the left sleeve. Okay, now we're good. Leave the long enough tail to be able to weave it in later. And just break it. This is wool and silk, so it's hard to break, and I don't want to cut it, bluntly cut it. I need that, and so it will be easier to weave it in. Okay, we're good. We work that partial row. We will work more rows here, so it will balance itself out. And now we're ready to cast on for the other sleeve. What do we do? I need to unplug this. Get your stitch markers number 3 and 4. Number 3 will go onto the front needle, which is this one. Number 4 will be on this needle, or the flexible cord at this point. And I'm gonna put it back into the holder. And now you can see it creates a little squish there, but with time we'll see if this is a good idea or not. But for now, I would keep the stitches with this. All right, join new yarn, or the one that you just broke off. What you want to do is to secure it a little bit, right? Let me get my crochet hook. So into any of these stitches, just so it will stay put, that little piece of yarn, just get it in there and just pull it through. So it just stays put, you know? All right, turn your work the right way. It's the same as for the other side, And then the same instructions to work these 2 stitches first, and then work the stitches up to this one, including the one that we actually worked. It will be a left front curve for the neckline. So same deal here. It's just, all right. Same thing here. What you want to do is, because it's secured, it's pretty stable there, wrap the yarn around the needle. That'll be your first stitch. That'll be your first stitch right there. Keep in mind that your stitch markers have to be like here and here. The cast on will be after the stitch marker, number 4. And then bring the needle behind the flexi cord. Grab the yarn from underneath and bring it up. Not too tight, so you'll be able to move the stitches on this needle, but tight enough. And then bring the tip of the needle in front of the cord. Grab the yarn, bring it up. Tip of the needle behind the flexi cord. Grab the yarn, bring it up. Keep working like that until you cast on the necessary amount of stitches for your size. The stitches number is different for the right side from the left side. It's different because we have to fit the pattern in later when we will start implementing the lace pattern. So keep going like this, in front of the needle, at the back of the needle. All right, I'll show you next what to do next. I just cast on necessary amount of stitches, and the last stitch, as always, should be wrapped around the flexi cable, because we started with the first stitch on the needle. The very last one will be around the cable. We are on the wrong side, so we will knit. Instructions reversed. If we purl there, we'll knit here. But the generic instructions for the turn's the same. Turn every 1 stitch in a different way, but I'll show you that too. Okay, we are knitting to the stitch marker number 3, right there. Even numbers will be at the back, odd numbers will be at the front. So let's do that, and we'll perform the same maneuver of decreasing that 1 stitch at the neckline twice for my size. Check your pattern. Always check your pattern. I am right before stitch marker number 3. I just knit the last stitch before that. What I need to do right now is bring the yarn to the front, remove the stitch marker. I hooked it on and it caught. Slip the next stitch purlwise like that. Put the stitch marker back onto the left needle and bring the yarn to the front. Turn work and purl 2 stitches together. Purl it together. Tighten it up to not have loose stitches around that neckline, and purl back. I just performed my little maneuver where I decrease 1 stitch. That creates a flat part, a little flat part at the top of the sleeve. If I were to start shaping the neckline from here, it looks odd and it doesn't fit right. So I need just a little bit of the flat surface at the top of the sleeve. I will have the same for the back, so it will be enough of the flat part there. What we are doing now is we're starting working on the short row shaping. I just purled, this is the beginning of that short row. I just worked all of the stitches, knit all of the stitches to almost to stitch marker number 3. Let's do the prep work before we continue working. The same thing is for the other side. I'm following my directions for the shirt rows, and it's turn every stitch 4 times, turn every 2 stitches 3 times. So I'm going to place my stitch marker right here to mark the end of my short rows, which will be 1 stitch away from where you broke the yarn. And four stitches. Let's mark that. Here we go. All right. So let's continue working. Let's get to stitch marker number 3. At this point, we're not decreasing anymore. So I'm gonna slip the stitch marker number 3 onto the right needle. I will knit 1 stitch. I will turn work. Knit stitches are not purl stitches. My stitch is positioned properly on the needles. Insert the right needle tip into the stitch on the left needle, the first stitch on the left needle purlwise. Slip it off the left needle, wrap the yarn around the right needle and pull it. So you can see that we're pulling the stitch from the underneath, from the row below, over the right needle. Bring the yarn to the front, slip the stitch marker, and purl back to the beginning of the row. That's your first turn. I'm working my first double stitch on this side. Insert the needle into the double stitch, knit it. We are 1 stitch short row instructions, 1 stitch away, knit it, turn work, and create a double stitch, tighten it up, work back, slipping stitch marker, slipping stitch marker number 3. So it's the same instructions as for the other side. Just keep on working short rows, and I'll meet you here at this stitch marker and where we join the yarn. Here's where I'm at. I just finished working the very last turn at the left front side. This is it. This is where we broke the yarn, and I am at the beginning of the wrong side row. Remember, we had 1 extra row here that we worked to this point and broke the yarn. This will balance it out because we're going to have to work back. What's going to happen now? Now that we have that curve, this is the right side. See how beautiful is this shaping? And then we will have a little curve at the back, like that. It'll be like that. So the difference here is about 2.5 inches between these two. And it will stretch out, so that will take some of the inches off the difference. It'll be probably 2 inches. It's doable. So what's going to happen now is we're starting work on the wrong side, and the lace pattern will go from this stitch marker, number 1, to stitch marker number 3. Well, actually reverse, because we're starting working from that side. So it will be from stitch marker number 3 going to stitch marker number 1. This is where we will concentrate at this point, and the pattern starts here. The lace pattern is 3 stitches repeat from here to here, working flat. When we will expand to the sleeves for the right side, it will be +1 stitches. On the left side, +2 stitches to make up for the offset in the pattern. When we'll start working in around, it's always just 3 stitches repeat. There will be 2 separate charts for working flat and around in the pattern. Check your pattern. And instructions that come with it. Written instructions, charts, whatever you understand better, because I did not include the stitch marker shift. There's a stitch marker shift going on in the pattern to keep it all intact. I will show it to you in the video, but it's not in the pattern. What else we will be doing at the same time? So anything past stitch marker 3 or stitch marker 1 to the right sleeve, to the left sleeve, we will be shaping using short rows. So we will be working shorter rows from stitch marker number 3 to stitch marker number 1, going back and forth. And when we cross the 3 or 1, we will be adding more stitches. As you come to short row turns, we'll be just adding those stitches and spreading that lace pattern onto those stitches. What I want to do right now is probably mark my short rows that I will be working for the sleeves. Check the instructions because short rows are generic instructions. I will use them for front, back, left side, right side. They are the same. So what we have here is we will be turning for my size. I'm just giving you an approximate instruction for one size, for my size. And it could be approximate because it actually can change. Sometimes I tend to change those, seeing how well it goes, how well of a curve it creates, because I divide it into shoulders and then sleeves. So in here, the gap is shorter, then a little longer. So the instructions for my size read that I have to turn here from stitch marker number 3 to the end of the row, and from stitch marker number 1 to the end of the row. I have to turn every 2 stitches 3 times. That'll be for the shoulder. You can mark it all right now. So I'm basically just counting 2 stitches, first turn, placing, this is where removable stitch markers come in handy. Whether you use coconuts, the simple ones, or the tweak horn, anything, or any that you bought, you can get them on Etsy, anywhere, these ones. If you will use, whether you use these ones, colorful or not, I prefer to use these. They're easier to remove, they're easier to reposition, so, and I just like how it looks. You'll see it. So, then this is the first one. Number 2, 2 stitches away. Number 3, that's my third turn with 2 stitches, right? And then 3 stitches once. And it's just easier. See, it's much easier for me to use the rounded clasp than the other ones. It comes with territory and experience. Then I have to turn 4 stitches 2 times. And because I won't have enough stitch markers, probably, surprise, surprise, I will mark only some after 4 stitches increase because I have to do it for the other side too. We're doing it all at the same time. Lace pattern, implementing lace pattern onto the sleeves, and using short row turns to shape the sleeves at the top to remove the bulk down the line. Okay, from this point on to the very end, we will be turning every 5 stitches 9 times. What does it mean? At the very end, you will be left with 5 stitches for the right sleeve and 6 stitches for the left sleeve because I am 1 stitch off on one sleeve. It's not going to make much difference, but that's the way the pattern goes. So the lace pattern to be able to do it. Okay, so that's what I've done here. And I can continue, or then when these stitch markers become available, I will just move on them to 5 stitches apart and mark that. But for now, I just want to make sure that I will not miss a turn here. Anything after stitch marker number 1 towards the end of the row, I have same instructions as here. They're identical. For the back, for the front, they're identical. Now, 3 times 2 stitches apart. That's what I'm marking. 1, 2, third. And see how easy that is? I love the rounded clasps. Not the lobster ones, these. They glide easier on the needles. They're just really good. All right. That. And so this was 2 stitches apart, once 3 stitches apart, and then 2 times 4 stitches apart I will have to turn. So every turn, right before the stitch marker, I have to work that stitch, turn, work, go back. And that's all it means. So 3 once, 4, 2 times, and 5 stitches apart. Done. I'll just use up those markers, mark anything I can at this point, and then as stitch markers become available, not that I don't have more of the other kind, I do, but I'll just keep these the same stitch markers here. Okay, all right. Now we're gonna start working it. The lace pattern starts on the wrong side, from the wrong side, row 5. Okay, so this is what my masterpiece looks like. Isn't that beautiful? I just love it. Elevates the whole look. Brings joy to knitting. Stitch marker queen. All right. So right now the working yarn is left sleeve, wrong side, because we're working in stockinette stitch, right side, wrong side. We are making up the difference between when we worked one extra row here to transition to the left sleeve. We will work to stitch marker number 3, slipping the stitch markers. Let me do that, and I'll come and show you, guide you through the lace pattern and a few short row turns here. I use Excited as I Am to start the lace pattern and sleeve shaping using a lot of short rows. I am, especially when working with this bling. Okay, slip stitch marker number 3 and start working on the pattern. We have one row here of purl stitches. The pattern is on the right side is knit stitches, all knit stitches. So from stitch marker number 3 to stitch marker number 1, we are purling every stitch. My stitches are turned again, just a reminder. Not that you don't know, but just a reminder. So I am going to purl all of the stitches from stitch marker number 3 to stitch marker number 1. Good thing the lace pattern gives you a little bit of a breather time. When you come to the double stitch, this is where we broke the yarn. You will tighten it up before you weave it in, and you can weave it in now so you don't have those ends later. But first, purl that double stitch together. You can tell it's a double stitch. There's your yarn right here. You can place a stitch marker to remind you that there is a double stitch, just in case you don't miss it or work one at a time. So both stitches, purl them, and continue working on to stitch marker number 1. This lace pattern gives you a little bit of a breather. You literally work in stockinette stitch for 3 rows, and then you work a lace pattern. And that sometimes could be challenging because you have to move stitch markers out of the way of the pattern. But most of the time it's pretty easy. And I included double yarn overs, so it will open up the pattern more. The original one, when I found it, it didn't have the double yarn overs. It was just one yarn over, but I didn't like the look. Sorry, I have a glass table, so where the material is, where I don't have a background, the stitch markers just create a lovely sound. It's almost like Christmas. That's what I feel like right now. Okay, so we are here. What happens now? Slip stitch marker number 1 onto the right needle and go to the first turn. Here, as we work these stitches, we're switching to work in stockinette stitch. This is the wrong side, meaning we will be purling all of these stitches. So all of the stitches on the right side, from this point on, we're switching to work from reverse stockinette stitch to stockinette stitch. What does it mean here? We purl 2 stitches. You can leave this marker here for now, letting you know this is a double stitch, or you can remove it. I'll leave it for now. Turn work. Because as you come to it, if you see the double stitch and have the marker, sometimes it might get confusing. If you will remove it, you will know this is double stitch and you have to go further. Either way, whichever way is easier for you, because we all understand instructions differently or work differently. Whichever you understand better, just do it. What you do right now is you create a double stitch. Again, because of my weird pearls, let me turn the stitch the right way on the needle. Bring the yarn to the front. Insert the right needle into the first stitch on the left needle. Slip it off of the left needle. Bring the yarn, working yarn, over the right needle tip and pull that stitch up over the right needle. So it creates this double stitch because it's pulling the stitch from the row below, right there. Tighten it up a little bit. It doesn't let you go further than this, but it's nice when they're a little bit tighter. Creates a cleaner edge. For now, we don't have enough stitches to implement the pattern. You need 3 stitches. This is a tip. Remember it. You need 3 stitches on this side, after the double stitch, to be able to work the pattern fit it in with the rest of the pattern. What do we do right now? We are starting the row of the pattern, of the lace part of the pattern. Slip stitch marker number 1, and now we're going to be working in 3 stitches. Repeat. First, make the double yarn over. Wrap your yarn twice around the needle. 1, 2. And then out of these 3 stitches, we will make 2. If I were to purl the right way and position the stitches the right way, let me just show you. They would be on the needles like that. And if you follow instructions, written instructions, or my chart, it tells you to slip the first stitch knitwise. The yarn is at the back. Knit the second stitch without slipping it off of the left needle. On the right needle, the second stitch from the tip, slip it over the first stitch. Let it go. And then knit 2 stitches together on the left needle. You just decreased 1 stitch, and it's all very symmetrical here. Let's repeat. Let's position these stitches the right way. And I will show you, for those who purl the same way and have stitches turned, I will show you how to do it. Just don't pay attention really to the instructions in the pattern, knowing that your stitches are twisted. The instructions in the pattern tell you are for the stitches positioned on the needles the right way. That's what I want to say. All right, 2 yarn overs. It will be 1 stitch. I just want it to be for it to be larger in size, wider, open up. So slip the first stitch knitwise. Knit the second stitch without slipping it off the left needle. The second stitch on the right needle, slip it over the first one and let it go. Knit 2 stitches together on the left needle. So this is row number 2 in the chart. It's always the same. And then row number 6, I think, we will offset it by 1 stitch to the right. I will keep working to stitch marker number 3, and I'll come back when I'm here at this point. For those of you who purl my way with twisted stitches, this is how you work this pattern. Slip the first stitch, knit twice, it's already positioned that way. Knit the second stitch, slip the second stitch on the right needle over the first one. You will have to turn these stitches. There you go. Knit them together. That's how it's done. So the pattern ends here. Yarn over here, the decreased stitches here. If you would think it will be offset and I need another yarn over here, no, you don't. You will increase a stitch, unnecessary stitch. This will be offset by the second set of these instructions, the 6th row through 8th. It will be offset because the yarn over there will be done after. So this row, the yarn over is done before the decrease. The other set of instructions, a few rows later, will be done. The yarn overs are after the decrease. So that will balance out. Slip the stitch marker number 3. And now I'll teach you how to work short rows. So that one we didn't start yet. We just got to it. And the easy part is you will just have to work in stockinette stitch here without going through this yarn over business. All right, knit to your stitch marker, right? Turn work. I mean, we started on the other side. We're just moving it here. And because we're back to the left sleeve, create a double stitch. So insert your right needle tip into the stitch purlwise, slip it off the left needle, bring the yarn over the right needle, tighten it up, creating a double stitch. It's spread out. You see how beautiful it looks? And now you will purl slipping stitch marker number 3 to stitch marker number 1, purl the yarn over, releasing the second wrap. Purl the yarn over, releasing the second wrap. Keep going like that to stitch marker number 1, and then 2 double stitch, and we will go through the rows, short rows. So keep working and release the double yarn overs. Knit into the first one, releasing all of the reps, and you will see how beautifully that stitch opens up, that yarn over opens up. Okay, almost at the double stitch. All right. And the last yarn over. Slip the first stitch marker, or stitch marker number 1, I should say, to be accurate. Purl this stitch, purl the double stitch, right? Remove the stitch marker, go to the next turn, meaning purl 2 stitches. This is all you have to do until you will be at almost the very, like a few stitches away from the end. Then I will leave you for the time being. I think this will be enough guidance, and I will show you, of course, the full pattern repeat of the stitch of the lace, but then I will leave you and come back showing you how to work the body of the sleeve after you hit that, after you will be here. All right, that's just what's to come. Turn work, leave the stitch marker or remove it, it's up to you. And then knit. This is row number 3 of the lace pattern. So these, see how helpful these are? You will never forget where to turn. Slip the stitch, make the double stitch, work to stitch marker number 1, slip it. At this point, we don't have much of things going on for 2 more rows. The next row, we will offset the pattern, and I will show you how to do that because we will need to move stitch markers. All right, there it is. Knit to stitch marker number 3. What could happen with the lace? This was done on purpose. How do you know? There's something off. The stitch marker should have been in between patterns that I know of because I'm on the row where the stitch marker doesn't have to be moved. And now I have to move it. So something's off, and then I'm looking at it and yes, something is off. This is just stockinette stitch. So I'm missing a yarn over. So this is what could happen. This is what did happen to me on one of my samples. By the sample number 5, I know the pattern, but still sometimes you just make mistakes. What do? We know that this was a 3-stitch repeat, and this was supposed to be a 3-stitch repeat, but it's only 2 and it's missing the yarn over. What do? You slip this stitch either with your needle or with a crochet hook. Pick up the first float, something that right here that will create that yarn over, and create a knit stitch, right? So under the first one, grab the second one, bring it to the front. Coconuts or some other ones, Knit Picks has those double crochet hooks, little ones to pick up stitches, so you could just slide that over and maneuver it, but I'll have to just do it again and reposition it. And then, so the stitch will be above the float. Grab the float and bring it through, creating another knit stitch. Place it on the left needle like that. This will widen up a little bit. It's not going to be quite as wide as this, but it's not going to be noticeable. So move this stitch back. Don't forget, this is the yarn over right here. Create it so you don't miss it again, although you can correct it now, but don't miss it. And like that, make the decrease. Slip the stitch marker, continue with the pattern. If you make a mistake like that, it's easy to fix. If you make a mistake that's not easy to fix, please make sure you have a lifeline, a good row for the lifeline here that will go through the double stitches too, because that will be hard to fix too. But if you have a lifeline, it's easier to just get your needle through and start from the row where you before you made the mistake. Good row for the lace pattern would be row number 4 or 8. 4 or 8. Make sure you will put the lifeline into the row 4 or 8 of the lace pattern, including those double stitches and all that stuff. This way it'll be so much easier for you to come back and start over again, if that's just not as simple as creating the little yarn over. So right now you can tell this is where we fixed it, and it's almost the same size as this one. When it will wiggle through, it'll be close. You're not going to notice that, but that's the little fix. This is the little tip that you can use. So I worked row number 4 of the lace chart, slip stitch marker number 3, knit the first stitch, knit the double stitch. Now we know that we need to remove this stitch marker and work to the next stitch marker and turn work. So this pattern, it's an 8-row repeat. We will be working, and it is an 8-row repeat, but when we're incrementing it further for the sleeve, when you work from end to end without short rows, we'll actually be working 4-row repeats, because it's just you have to stop at some point and you can't just go all 8 rows. So it will be, it's an 8-row repeat for the pattern, but we will be working 4 rows repeat to make up the depth of the sleeve or the body later. So this is 1 through 4 rows, and now we will work row number 5 through 8. Turn work. I will show you a little bit of that, and then I will come back when I will guide you through that other row number 6 of the lace pattern. So just keep working these short rows. The instructions are generic, pretty, I think it's easy to understand, but let me know if it's difficult. I think me guiding you through here becomes easier for a short row novice. But this is the best way I found out how to do it, not to go into row by row detail and it gets more confusing. So I just made a double stitch. At this point, it's pretty, like, just watch previous times when I did the double stitch, when I created double stitch. Work to stitch mark number 3 and keep working to stitch marker number 1, and then to double stitch, work the double stitch, work to the next turn. That's basically the instructions. The only thing you have to pay attention here, because stitch markers that mark the short rows guide you through when you need to turn. You will not forget it. But the only thing you need to, and you will get the groove of the lace pattern, you will stop following the chart itself with the written instructions, and you will just fly through this. This is a very fast knit. Just the stitches are so big, the yarn just glides off the needles. It's amazing. So let's get to the stitch marker number 1 and to the double stitch, turn and go back, and I will show you that other offset yarn over / decrease row. Okay, almost there. All right, slip stitch marker number 1, working to the double stitch. There's my double stitch right before the marker. If you removed it, you will still know it's a double stitch. Just work it and then work to the next stitch marker. Or if you left it, work the double stitch, remove the stitch marker, work the next 2 stitches, or whatever it is for your size. They're all different. It's all shaped differently. Same in a similar manner, but different stitch repeats. Okay, so now we're gonna work that offset eyelet row. Create a double stitch. Right there, my stitches are turned. And this is how I do it. Just, you know, at this point, I just create a double stitch easily without showing you the details. Work to stitch marker number 1 right there. And now we will start the pattern. So actually, let me show you because this is one thing that I missed. All right. At this point, let me go back. And this is where you can make a mistake. It's okay. It's still going to look good. But this is how to implement. So right now I'm going to show you how to implement the pattern, the lace pattern, into the becoming available to you stitches at the sleeves. So anything from stitch marker 1 to the end of the row here, and anything after stitch marker 3 to the end of the row there. I have 3 stitches here. I can make the decrease, but on this row, I do not make the yarn over before the stitches. I make the yarn over after the stitches. So there's another thing that you have to pay attention to. This is your yarn over. This is your double stitch right here. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 stitches available to you to work with that are after stitch marker number 1. What you need to know here is these will guide you through. You can use stitch markers, removable ones, to guide you through, or you can just see, okay, these create a pattern. Anytime there is a yarn over in the middle of the three stitches, that's your repeat that you will have to base the next repeat on. So there's the three stitches with the yarn over right under the middle stitch. Here's the next one with yarn over under the middle stitch. And here is what I'm telling you. Stitch marker number 1 right now in a way of those 3 stitches. So for this row, row number 5, your stitches, your repeats of the pattern are offset by 1 stitch to the right. So this, you need these 3 stitches, and then you need next 3 stitches. And the yarn over will be done after the decrease. So what you can do, I hope this is clear, but this is how I found out that it's just on the next row, we are offset by 1 stitch to the right on the next yarn over row. So let's offset this pattern. What I need to do is, first, there's no yarn over for this row here. First, knit 2 together without slipping this stitch off. Same thing as there. You repeat the same instructions that I showed you there, and then you knit 2 together. What's happening here is you can, if you want to, have a removable stitch marker. Maybe something like coconuts maybe will be better here because it's lighter. But you can just, you know, hook it onto that, and you will know that the yarn over was done after the decrease, after the stitch marker. Yarn over. Why do you need this? The next yarn over row will be offset 1 stitch to the left. And if you know that on the previous row, because you can get lost on which row are you, unless you keep really good track, sometimes when you don't have the chart and you remember the stitch pattern, you're okay. But you need to know when to offset, when to make the double yarn over after the decrease and when to make it before the decrease. If you put the stitch marker, removable stitch marker onto the decrease, and you see that the yarn over is after that stitch marker, then you know that the next time you need to make it before the decrease. Is that clear? I hope it's clear. So just in case, I'm putting that one on to show you when I get to the next, to the repeat of this row here. What's happening here is we can slip this, remove the stitch marker, knit that half the stitch, slip this one over. Now you need to place the stitch marker here. My stitches are turned, so, and then knit these 2 together. Then make the double yarn over. That completes this 3 stitch repeat, you know, with the stitch marker in the middle, right smack in the middle of that pattern. So the same thing here. Let me turn the next 3 stitches the right way and show you how it's done if you purl your normal way. Slip the first stitch, knit half the stitch without slipping it off, Slip the second stitch on the right needle over the first stitch, knit 2 stitches together on the left needle, make double yarn over. The second repeat complete, or actually third because we started before, so we actually started expanding onto the sleeves. And just see by that 3 stitch repeat, just see how much more you can go and expand the pattern onto the sleeve. If you miss one, it's okay. It's not that noticeable here at the top. Plus, you will have some rows of straight stockinette stitch, especially down here where you have 5 stitches, where you're 5 stitches away, and you can't implement all of them into the pattern. So slowly, I'm not holding your hand and guiding through every one of 21 sizes because it's all different for all of the sizes. Just see where you can fit it in and fit it in. And on each side it will be slightly different, but it will be, you will catch up with those like on the next 4 row repeat for the other side. That's what I mean. Okay, let's keep going. Let me turn those stitches. I will show you this one more time, and then I'll work to the end of the row. I will turn, and somewhere in between I will check in and show you what I'm doing. Oh, did I do it? Yes, I did. Talk too much. Slip the stitch, knit half the stitch without slipping it off, slip the second over the first, knit 2 together, double yarn over. Okay, maybe that will help. Okay, that's it. And then just keep going to stitch marker number 3, and I'll come back to you and show you the next short row and guide you through another probably repeat, and then you're on your own until you will be done with all of the short rows, and you will be somewhere close to the end. I've worked all of these stitches, and we're 4 stitches away from the stitch marker number 3. I will make a double yarn over, keep repeating my pattern for these 3 stitches, and then because at this point I'm offset by 1 stitch to the right, I need to extend that pattern onto the sleeve and maneuver around the stitch marker. So slip the first stitch of the 3 stitch repeat, remove the stitch marker, knit half the stitch, slip the stitch over, and now place the stitch marker on your right needle, and we can continue. So on this side, this is my last one, and I need a double yarn over because this is the row where we make the double decrease, the decrease by 1 stitch decrease, and then the yarn over after it. I don't have enough stitches to continue on with the lace pattern, so I will just work in stockinette stitch and wait until 3-4 stitches will become available to me on this side, and then spread that goodness, that pattern, onto those stitches. So right now I know I don't have enough. Knit the stitch, knit the double stitch, remove the stitch marker, knit to the next stitch marker, turn work. This is one of the good rows where you just simply purl through the whole row, releasing those wraps, where you come to the yarn over stitches. So create a double stitch, tighten it up, purl to the stitch marker number 3. Okay, the yarn over starts here because we already spread it onto the sleeves, but there you go. Slip the stitch marker number 3, but there wasn't enough stitches for the next repeat. Purl, purl the yarn over, once releasing all of the wraps. It's just 1 stitch. It's just very wide stitch. Big stitch. Okay, and then purl your way to the other side, turn, and I will work a few just stockinette stitch rows. So we need 2 more rows before we go back to this pattern and offset it, and then I'll come back working short rows and show you what's gonna happen, how to go back to the row number 1, 2 through 8, all the 8 row repeats of the lace pattern. again at the same time while you're making those short row turns at the sleeves. And I will be able to show you how it's shaping up so you will see what it's like. So I completed the 8 row repeat, and I worked 1 extra row for the next 8 row repeat. And now we're ready to implement more stitches into the pattern. And this is where I wanted to show you. So I went ahead and I put different stitch marker here because that one was way too heavy and it was pulling on the stitches. How do you know that? So you can see that the yarn over was after that decrease. So if you want to mark your decrease stitch here, and you see that the yarn over is after that stitch marker, you know that the next one has to start, the yarn over has to start before the decrease. So we're repeating this row right now. The stitch marker is good. We don't need to move it. Why? This is how you know. So this is that, let's start from here. This is that 3 stitch repeat, right? It's offset. The 3 stitches were here with the yarn over in the middle here. That's why it was offset. Now it's back in a normal position. So we're offset by 1 stitch. This is your 3 stitch repeat with the yarn over in the middle. So that's the first. Another 3 stitches right before the stitch marker, right? So if we keep going, we can take these 3 stitches on the sleeve for the pattern, and then 3 stitches here for the pattern, and 3 more. I could have grabbed 3 of these because this is my double stitch, and then I knit 1 more stitch. But the hardest way that I found out, don't make a yarn over right after the double stitch. Not gonna work. It'll create a mess. So knit these, and you know based on this stitch marker that the yarn over was done after the decrease. So right now this is the row where the yarn over is before the decrease, and we already calculated, okay, this is our 3 with the yarn over in the middle of the 3 stitches. That's how you check where you're at. And then another 3 stitches and 3 more. So let's continue. We keep working our short rows. Just keep repeating that thing. It's your really monotonous practice of short rows. Double yarn over. All right, let's position these correctly. I'll guide you through this again. Slip the first stitch, knit the second half stitch, slip the stitch over, knit 2 together. Make the yarn over twice, and then for people who knit my way, who purl my way, just keep on twisting those stitches back the right way on a needle. Yarn over. We don't need to manipulate stitch marker number 1 or 3 at this point because it's between the repeats and all is good in the world. But on the next repeat you will have to maneuver it again. It's 1 stitch off, it will be 1 stitch off. Keep going like that, and I will make a few more. Make sure you make the yarn over after you slip the stitch marker. Don't do it before because your repeat starts with yarn over. So stitch marker on the right needle, then yarn over. Make sure you work in 3 stitch repeats, and yarn over on this row is your first stitch in that pattern repeat. So this is what we have so far. Let me turn it the right way and spread it out a little bit. So this is what we have so far. We are shaping the sleeves. This is the half. The other half will be worked for the back the same way. I'll guide you through some of it, but not as in detail as I did it here. This will stretch out. Don't worry that it looks kind of smallish right now. No, it's not. It will be wide. So that's how it's shaping up. And then there's slope for the shoulders. That'll be slanted here. So there it is. Just keep working like that. Don't forget to offset your pattern. Don't get lost in here because the second row is always offset by 1 row to the right, and then we will offset it back to the left. And see, it doesn't make a difference here where you will continue. You will have some of the just plain stockinette stitch here and there. It will match because of the offset in the pattern. It will match. So there you go. Keep on working. I'll come back and show you more when I will be closer to the very end of the sleeves. Okay, quick little check-in. I have shaped and worked all of my short rows. First, you ended on the right sleeve, so my last short row ended here, and then I had a few stitches left that I just worked to the end of the row, and then I turned work, of course, because it's the beginning of the row at this point, and worked back to the left sleeve, where I will work the last double stitch and then work to the very end. So these are my last couple of stitches that I have to work, and then I will be working in full rows. So if you are in the middle of the pattern, I am not, because when I will turn, it will be time for the next 4-row repeat of the pattern. Check your pattern and see how many more of the full 4-row repeats you have to work before you have to stop. At this point, we built enough depth. This is the middle of the top of the sleeve. So we're building more. For some sizes, it will be 2 of these repeats, or 8-row, full 8 rows. For some, it'll be 3 4-row repeats. For some, will be more. So check your pattern. How much more do you have to go before you stop? When you will stop your work, your very last stitch will be your left sleeve, right side. So just like I'm ending it here right now, when I'm switching to work full rows from left sleeve to right, I will end here. And then we will break the yarn and leave enough tail for the 3-needle bind off at the underarm. So it will be here. Now, if you don't need to, just a little tip, at this point, when you already start working short rows and you don't want to switch your stitch markers to match the pattern, you don't want to shift them left and right, you can take them off. Why do I keep them here? Just so you can stay on track, because sometimes you might increase this stitch somewhere else, or what happens sometimes is you forgot to make an increase. Let's say this one wouldn't be here, and you would just knit straight through, and then you can actually pick up stitches and create that increase, create that yarn over. But this way, if you count your stitches between the markers and from the marker to the end of the row, I put it in a pattern how many stitches you have to have for each section. You have to check, because sometimes you just inadvertently would just increase a stitch accidentally. It happens. So make sure you're on track with stitches. Constantly count them. Make sure you didn't add or decrease somewhere a stitch, because this is important for the following work when you will be joining the sleeves. When I will be done with my few extra repeats for the depth of the sleeve, I will switch to work on the back. So we will join the yarn and we will start working from the right, shaping the same way as we done for the front. It's the same thing. I will be checking in, but I am not gonna be as detailed as I was for the front. Otherwise, this video will be 5 hours long. So we'll be shaping slightly here. It's not as deep as the front, just slightly, and then transitioning here, breaking the yarn, just like we did for the front, shaping stuff here, continue working, and then building some extra fabric at the back by working just straight reverse stockinette stitch, because this curve is slightly deeper, so we have to make up for those rows, because we're going to be probably using, well, a lot less stitches here for the back neckline drop. But if this is the middle of the sleeve, we need the same amount of rows in reverse stockinette stitch for the back. So basically, once we're done with the shaping of the back neckline drop, we will just keep working in reverse stockinette stitch to match this depth here. And then we'll switch to work in lace pattern and shaping the sleeves. Same, it's the same thing. You've already done it. You will be doing the same thing at the back. So that's what's to come. Just checking in, and well, keep on knitting. Also, just to work the very last double stitch, you just keep on working that, and then you just knit to the end of the row. We're working in stockinette stitch, so just keep on knitting those stitches, and we are done. So from this point, when we work the very last stitch at the left sleeve, we'll start working full rows. Again, for as long as the pattern will tell you, for as many 4-row repeats as the pattern tells you. Check your pattern. And now we're working from the left sleeve to the right, back and forth. And I will come back again to you. I have finished work for the sleeves. They're at the right depth. I just worked on a few repeats of the lace pattern, 4 rows each here, because sometimes it could be 3 a 4-row repeat, it could be 4 or 5. So here we do not work in 8 full rows of the pattern. And I ended at the left sleeve, right side. Right now, what I need to do is break this yarn, leaving enough yarn for the 3-needle bind off. So here we will be doing the 3-needle bind off for the sleeve. It will end somewhere in here, but if you want to be safe, you can just measure the yarn. Basically, you need 3 lengths. That's almost like that's a rule. So measure it to stitch marker number 3 times. So, and this is enough. And break the yarn. After this, we will switch to work on the back. So these stitches I will have to, okay, all right. These stitches will be on hold, so I'll have to transfer them from the flexi cord to the needle with my needles, my working needles. What do we do? This is so easy to do. So cord, right? Stitches that are held, we need to transfer them. Take this, if you have that, remove it temporarily. Now, connect this tip to this end of the cord. Like that. Move on to the next one. All the stitches, right? Connect this tip to this cord. Like that. And now let's move it. Okay. What do we have? Stitches transferred to the flexi cord. Stitches transferred to the needles. And now, to keep them safe, there we go. Great, right? Okay, let's start working on the back of the sweater. Front, back. So we'll be working here with even stitch marker numbers. 2 will be your right side, 4 will be your left side. We're starting work with the right side sleeve, and we're starting work on the wrong side of the right sleeve. Okay, join the new yarn, and we will be working like this. Work the full row to stitch marker number 2, and then we will be decreasing 2 stitches. Check for your size how many stitches. So we'll be knitting these 2 together, and then we will shape that little back neckline drop. I will knit to the stitch marker number 2, and then I'll show you the maneuver where we decrease the stitch. I'm working my first row from the beginning of the right sleeve to the stitch marker number 2. Here's what you have to know. The way we provisionally cast on stitches here, some of them will be turned. This one is turned, this one positioned properly on the needles. So just keep knitting through the right loop of the stitch, knowing that it will be twisted for every other stitch. See what I mean? It's just in the wrong direction. Okay, we're almost at stitch marker number 2. Let's perform the little decrease maneuver. Bring the yarn to the front, remove stitch marker number 2, slip the first stitch purlwise onto the right needle off of the left needle, place stitch marker back on the left needle, bring the yarn to the back of the work, turn work, purl 2 stitches together, the slipped stitch and the next stitch, purl them together, tighten it up, purl to the end of the row. Repeat this as many times as the pattern tells you to. Check your pattern. I've worked that flat part for, well, 4 rows total, 2 turns where I decreased 2 stitches. That's that flat part at the very top of the right sleeve. And right now I'm ready to work on the back neckline drop. The total number of stitches, it's in the pattern, check for your size. For my size, it's 5 stitches, so I'm going to count them from here to here. I will place my removable stitch marker at 5 stitches from stitch marker number 2. And the instructions tell me that I need to turn once after the first stitch and then 2 stitch intervals. So just to remember these instructions, I will place additional removable stitch marker after the first stitch. So I know that the next short turn will be after 2 stitches and then the next short row will be here. So 3 short row turns all together from stitch marker number 2 to my stitch marker marking all of the stitches for the back neckline drop shaping. And let's start doing this. It's the same principle, same instructions. Well, they're different, of course, less short rows, but the idea is the same. Just repeat the short row turns, the double stitches, all of that. It's the same in principle, the same. Slip stitch marker number 2, and then knit the first stitch. This is our first turn work. Create double stitch, meaning insert your right needle tip into the first stitch on the left needle, slip it, bring the yarn over the right needle, bringing that stitch from the row below over the right needle, tighten it up, create double stitch, slip stitch marker number 2, and purl to the end of the row. Repeat these instructions the next time on the second stitch after the double stitch, and then one more time before this stitch marker. Check instructions for your size. You could have more turns, you could have less turns. So it's the same as we worked for the front. It's the same instructions, just different short row instructions. So I'll come back to you when I will be at this stitch marker, when I will be done with my short rows here, and I will show you how to transition to the other side. I'm about to make the next turn. So this is my first double stitch after stitch marker number 2. I will knit it, remove my supporting stitch marker, and now I know that I have to knit 2 stitches and turn. For my size, my instructions. 2 stitches, turn. Same thing here, create a double stitch. Bring the yarn over, tighten it up, purl to the end of the row, slipping stitch marker number 2. I am at the stitch marker number 2, and on my last double stitch, I've already made all of the turns. This is my double stitch before the stitch marker that ends my short rows for the right side of the right back neckline drop. So I just worked my last double stitch. I'm removing this stitch marker, and then the patterns tells me to work across knitting these stitches because we're working in reverse stockinette stitch. This is the right side, this is the wrong side. It tells me to knit to 6 stitches away from stitch marker number 4 for my size. So that's what I'm gonna do. I'll just keep knitting, and then you will stop and break the yarn. Leave enough end to weave it in of the yarn, and we will transition to work on the left sleeve. We will join the yarn at the edge of the left sleeve, at the end of the left sleeve, and work towards the middle, making the decreases and working on short rows. Same thing here, same directions as for the right side will be for the left side. I might have a little footage there, but mostly it's identical, just reversed. And you've already seen it for the front. So this is basically straightforward from here. You just repeat instructions, less short rows, different instructions for the turns, but it's the same. You've already seen how to do the short row turns on one side or the other. It's not news anymore. So it's the same thing. Just join the yarn. All right, where are we? 6 stitches away. So this is where I stop and I break the yarn. All right. And now, well, because the pattern wasn't in front of me, I'm just going with the flow. So what we need to do right now is not join the yarn yet. This is the step that I missed. We just broke the yarn, bring it to the front of the work, to the wrong side, okay? And now slip all of the stitches, including the stitch marker, from the left needle onto the right needle without working them. These stitches will be twisted because of the provisional cast on. Every other stitch will be twisted. So slip them on, twisting them, positioning them the right way, purlwise, like that. So keep on doing that. And then when we at the end of the row, we will join the yarn and start working. Just follow the pattern at this point. I'll skip this portion. You've already seen it done for the front side. We've done it for the right side, for the back. So these instructions are the same. I will meet you when I am at my last double stitch. When I made all of the short row turns, I will meet you there and guide you through the next process. So just keep on slipping and then start working on the decrease and then short row shaping for the back neckline drop at the left side. I've just shaped the left side of the back neckline drop. This is where we broke the yarn, so that's all done. Now we have to even out that back part with the front. So we'll be working in reverse stockinette stitch, full rows from left side to right. I ended up work on the left sleeve wrong side, so I will turn work and I will start working full rows from here, ending up there. Check the pattern for how many rows you need to do that. So let me address one thing. Remember when I said that the cable was too stiff and it was elongating stitches? So rowing out happened here. I can fix it by just maneuvering stitches, which I probably will, because when I switched and put those stitches on this flexi cable, these stitches are fine. So those, because of the rigid cable, they were stretching out and they stretched out to this, which I do not like. So be careful there. If you're using stiff cables, just make sure that the second one is flexible where your stitches are, so when they move, they don't create this problem that you will have to address. This side, see, looks perfect because it was already on a flexi cable and I was casting on the stitches were cast on the flexi cable here. So that's what it is. So right now what you need to do is follow the directions in the pattern. It's stated in the pattern, but the first row, so you will be working for a certain amount of rows. Just check your pattern. And the first row, you will come to the second stitch, to the double stitch here. This was the last short row turn. I removed the stitch marker that guided me through to here. So this one, just purl it, because you will be purling all of the stitches here, and keep going. And then you will be just working in reverse stockinette stitch without any double stitches. So that's one thing to point out. But it's in a pattern. Check the pattern. Okay, this is where I'm at. I am at the wrong side, or actually I ended work on the right side of the right sleeve. I had to work a few rows of the reverse stockinette stitch to match the front. So when you fold it, the reverse stockinette stitch will be almost equal. It's off by one row because I have to end on the right side. But it's okay because the back is slightly curved, so we need that extra row. It will be good. All right, this is what it looks like. It will stretch slightly. It will stretch quite a bit when you block it. And I do recommend to block it before you move on to the sleeve trim, because it seems like this is wide enough sleeve, right? But it will not be as wide once you wet block it. It's just not going to be as wide. So what we're going to do right now is switch to work with a lace pattern from stitch marker number 2 to 4, and then we will place our markers to the same way as we were shaping them at the front. We will be shaping the sleeves at the back using the same instructions as for the front, and then implementing the lace pattern onto towards the ends of the sleeves, right and left. So that's what we will do. What's going to happen now is we need to work half the row meaning from the beginning of the right row to stitch marker number 2 in reverse stockinette stitch. This is the right side, so this will be reverse stockinette stitch, meaning we will knit all of these stitches up to stitch marker number 2. From stitch marker number 2, we will start lace pattern to stitch marker number 4, and then we will start our short rows. If I'm prepared for it, this will be just straight knit, so I won't need stitch markers, but just in case, I'm just going to place a few and then I'll come back and do it off the screen. From what I remember, I need to turn every second stitch 3 times. That'll be for the shoulders, or the shoulder part of the sleeve. And then 1 time 3 stitches apart. So 1, 2, 3, 2 stitches. Once 3 stitches apart, and then twice 4 stitch interval. Really quickly, that's 4 stitches, 4 stitches again, and then there will be 5 stitch interval. Total of whatever times. Check your pattern. You will not end at the end of the row, you will end a few stitches before the end of the row. And they're different on right and left side because of the pattern offset. Let's mark a few of them here on the right side. So 2 stitches, 2 stitches, and then I'll finish marking them off the screen. 2 stitches. So that's enough for me right now. I will guide you through a little bit and then you're on your own. And we will meet at the 3 needle bind off. So let's start this. I will work to stitch marker number 2 and I'll meet you there. I'll just knit all the stitches. I'm at my stitch marker number 2, and the lace pattern begins with the wrong side row. So I'm on the wrong side. I will be purling all of the stitches from stitch marker number 2 to stitch marker number 4, and then we'll begin the short rows. And I will come back and show you the lace pattern row number 2. While I'm going from stitch marker 2 to 4, one thing to mention, I would suggest you put the lifeline in at this point while you're working the lace and the short rows. Sometimes it could be, you will notice a mistake. Some of it I already show you how to address without unraveling anything, but if you will have to go back, make sure that you put the lifeline on the rows where you just knit or purl. Probably it will be row number 4 will be a good one, or row number 8. So if you are on those rows of the lace pattern, put the lifeline in just in case. You never know what might happen and you have to rip back, and it will be very hard with short row double stitches and with the lace pattern itself. So you know where you're at and you will be able to just easily go back, and the lifeline is your saver. Okay, we're at the stitch marker number 4. That was a little tip. And the right size, there you go. We already started that lace pattern at the back. What we're going to do right now is turn that same thing that we did already, all of the short row turns. We're switching to work in reverse stockinette stitch from stockinette, we're switching to work in stockinette stitch from reverse stockinette stitch if we're looking at the right side. So we are purling to the stitch marker where we marked our first turn. We turn work, and we make the double stitch. So let me position it properly on the needle. With the yarn in front of the work, insert your right hand needle into the stitch on the left hand needle, purlwise, slip it off. Bring the yarn towards the back of the right needle, pulling the stitch from the from the row below and making the double stitch. Tighten it up a little bit. It helps to bring the yarn forward and tighten it up a bit. And then knit to stitch marker number 4. This is where the lace pattern really starts, like the yarn overs and all that stuff. So this is a good row because we don't need to move the stitch marker anywhere. It will be on the next repeat where we offset the pattern. What we do is make the double yarn over right here after the stitch marker. So make sure you're on track where you make your yarn overs. It has to be done after. If you do it before, then you will increase this stitch count for the sleeve by 1, and you don't want to do that. Keep the stitch counts, and check them pretty often. Don't forget that double stitches do not count as 2. It counts as 1. So it's in a pattern check. I give you the stitch number count for each sleeve and for this part from stitch marker number 4 to stitch marker number 2. So keep working in this way. Double increase, double yarn over. Let me turn these stitches the right way. All right. And then slip the first stitch knitwise. Knit the second stitch without slipping it off the left needle. That's your half stitch. And then slip the second stitch on the right needle over the first stitch. After that, knit 2 stitches together on the left needle and slip them off the left needle. So this is your 3-stitch repeat. We just created 1 stitch, the double yarn over just to widen up the stitch, but it will be purled only once, releasing those wraps. And then the 3 stitches that used to be here, we decreased 1. So this is a 3-stitch repeat. Keep going. I will not turn these. I'll just work them. You already know what it's like, and just follow the chart or written instructions in the pattern. If your stitches are twisted, then follow what I just did. Work like that to stitch marker number 2, and then make your turn here. I will come back to you and show you again the offset of the pattern and how to see where you need to offset it and how to guide you through the increments once you start spreading that pattern onto the sleeves, how it guides you through. So remember that 3-stitch repeat is what matters here. All right. It's a little bit harder to implement the pattern onto the sleeve at the beginning of the short row, and it's easier to do it at the end because you already established the pattern and you go. So this is my this is my second row of the 8-row repeat, and if you check where your stitch marker number 4 is, it's right between those 3 stitches where the yarn over is right under the middle stitch of those 3. So what it means for me is that I will be making yarn overs before stitch marker number 4, then make a decrease. So the yarn over will be before the decrease. This is my third 3 stitches. The next 3 stitches will be this and this. This is where I will create a double stitch. So I will start yarn over here after the second stitch, and this will this is how I will implement that pattern, that lace pattern. Let me make the double stitch and then knit 1, double, yarn over, decrease 1 stitch out of 3, next yarn over, another decrease, my stitches are turned, reminder, and just keep going like that, right? So that's how you figure it out, basically. And we're trying to just spread it onto the sleeve, that little pattern. And at the end, it's easy because you already established it here. I have just finished working the short rows at the back. Check your pattern. I give you tips and tricks on actually when you can do the yarn overs as you transition towards the ends of the sleeves, how to spread out that pattern, the lace pattern, onto the stockinette stitch that you're working here at the edge of the sleeve. So I just check the pattern, it's in there. Where I'm at. In the pattern, I will give you directions on how to transition to start working on the depth of the sleeve, just in lace pattern. So when you are finished with your double stitches, I just worked my very last double stitch. It's this one right here, this stitch. Each one of the sizes will be at the same point. You will be on the right side of the right sleeve. This is where you end work. But each size will end differently on the 4 repeat pattern. Some will be at the very end of the either 4th row or 8th row. Some will be somewhere in the middle. What I saw in the pattern, and I tell you in the pattern how many more rows you have to actually work. So if you are not on the full, if you didn't end the full 4-row repeat as you worked your last double stitch here and transitioned to just working flat from the edge of the right sleeve to the edge of the left sleeve, finish those 2 rows. It's in the pattern. I tell you exactly how many more rows to work, but gauge it. If you made a mistake somewhere and you're in the wrong row and you see that you need to work 3 rows, work 3 rows. But you will have to end here on the right side where you will have the yarn and ready for the 3-needle bind off for the sleeve. So once you completed your first full row and worked the very last double stitch, see if you need to finish that 4-row pattern repeat. If you do, work those 2 additional rows, whatever you might have. From what I saw in the pattern, is just for some it's 0, for some it's 2, and I give you that that number in the pattern. And then if you follow the pattern for the front and you made, let's say for my size, it's 4 additional 4-row repeats right here. I will work those 4 rows here after I finish this initial 4-row repeat. I am finished here, so I'm okay. I don't need to do anything extra. I just need to work 4-row repeats to match it to the front. If you wanted to add, or if you added more depth to your sleeve and didn't follow the pattern, but maybe worked one extra 4-row repeat, repeat that for the back so they're equal. So when you fold them, they're equal. If this looks wide to you right now or deep to you right now, it's not going to be. It will stretch out. It will be actually much, much thinner, not as wide. So don't worry about it, and it will change in depth once we wash it and block it. And we will do it before, I suggest you do it before you actually work the sleeve trim. So that's where I'm at. I will work my extra 4-row repeats to match the front, and I will come back and show you the 3-needle bind off. So this is where we're at, and this is what it looks like right now. This is my front. And yes, some of them a little longer, but they basically more or less match the other side. But it's not going to be that noticeable. Don't worry about it. So, but try to just follow the pattern, what I give you in the pattern. So this is what it looks like right now. And well, I'll come back and show you the rest, what to do. It's a home stretch. Just a 3-needle bind off, and then we're working around, and that's it. Okay, this is where I'm at. I am at the wrong side, or actually I ended work on the right side of the right sleeve. I had to work a few rows of the reverse stockinette stitch to match the front. So when you fold it, the reverse stockinette stitch will be almost equal. It's off by 1 row because I have to end on the right side. But it's okay because the back is slightly curved, so we need that extra row. It will be good. All right, this is what it looks like. It will stretch slightly. It will stretch quite a bit when you block it. And I do recommend to block it before you move on to the sleeve trim, because it seems like this is wide enough sleeve, right? But it will not be as wide once you wet block it. It's just not going to be as wide. So what we're going to do right now is switch to work with a lace pattern from stitch marker number 2 to 4, and then we will place our markers to the same way as we were shaping them at the front. We will be shaping the sleeves at the back using the same instructions as for the front, and then implementing the lace pattern onto towards the ends of the sleeves, right and left. So that's what we will do. What's going to happen now is we need to work half the row meaning from the beginning of the right row to stitch marker number 2 in reverse stockinette stitch. This is the right side, so this will be reverse stockinette stitch, meaning we will knit all of these stitches up to stitch marker number 2. From stitch marker number 2, we will start lace pattern to stitch marker number 4, and then we will start our short rows. If I'm prepared for it, this will be just straight knit, so I won't need stitch markers, but just in case, I'm just going to place a few, and then I'll come back and do it off the screen. From what I remember, I need to turn every second stitch 3 times. That'll be for the shoulders, or the shoulder part of the sleeve. And then 1 time 3 stitches apart. So 1, 1, 2, 3, 2 stitches. Once 3 stitches apart, and then twice 4 stitch interval. Really quickly. That's 4 stitches. 4 stitches again, and then there will be 5 stitch interval. Total of whatever times. Check your pattern. You will not end at the end of the row. You will end a few stitches before the end of the row. And they're different on right and left side because of the pattern offset. Let's mark a few of them here on the right side. So 2 stitches, 2 stitches, and then I'll finish marking them off the screen. 2 stitches. So that's enough for me right now. I will guide you through a little bit, and then you're on your own. and we will meet at the 3 needle bind off. So let's start this. I will work to stitch marker number 2 and I'll meet you there. I'll just knit all the stitches. I finished working on the depth of the sleeves for the back, so right now they're matching the front. If you fold it, this is where I am at, and I'm ready to start my 3 needle bind off. What you need to do is, when you on both sleeves, the front of the sleeve and the back of the sleeve, count the stitches identified in the pattern from the beginning of the row towards the middle, and place a stitch marker on like that stitch count at the front and the back. They should be the same for left sleeve for the back and in front. They are different for the right sleeve. So this is left sleeve. For the right sleeve, the stitch count is different because of the offset in a lace pattern. Check the pattern. Place the stitch markers so they will match. When you fold it and you get ready for the 3 needle bind off, these stitch markers will let you know when to stop. Also, while you're at it, see if this is enough from the stitch markers where the 3 needle bind off will end. If this is wide enough for you, you want it wider, you want it narrower, just make sure that you will go in at 3 stitch interval to reduce the width of the body, or go that way to increase the width of the body. It's a three stitch count, and if you go 3 stitches on the left side, go 3 stitches on the right side, so it's symmetrical. Okay, let's do the 3 needle bind off. What I did is I place my stitch markers. I know where I need to when I need to stop. I start with my left side because here's where I have that little piece of yarn that I prepped for the 3 needle bind off, and I broke it. Now what I did is I just took a needle. Yes, this is the wrong side, but for now it doesn't matter. If you have needles and not the flexi cord where you keep the stitches, the live stitches, then you're okay. But I didn't want to move the stitches from the flexi cord, so what I did is I just pushed in, because it's easier to push in that side versus this side. Pushed in the needle, smaller size, it doesn't matter what size, smaller size will do just fine. Probably will be better. So let me do that. Now you will need the right side of the sweater to be inside. So when you fold the sleeves, the wrong side should be on the outside. And align the stitches on both needles. Here's what I will suggest is you go up a needle size for the 3 needle bind off, especially if you are a tight knitter. So what I have here is actually this one is 2 sizes up. 1 size, 2 sizes up are okay. Just a little needle because the tip is short, just to help me hold it. I mean a cable. All right, align the stitches on your flexi cable and the needle, or 2 needles, what have you. And let's start the 3 needle bind off. Get it closer to the edge. This one you need so the bind off will be looser, otherwise it will be so tight that it will cinch it at the bottom of the sleeve where the seam is. Let's start it. Slip, insert your needle into the first stitch on the front needle, back needle, cable, whatever. Insert the right, or your bind off needle, or your right hand needle into the stitch on the front needle knitwise. Insert it into the first stitch on the back needle knitwise. Knit 2 stitches together, or pull the yarn, the working yarn, through both stitches. I think that's what the pattern says in the beginning. And then slip these stitches off the left needles. Push it through here because that will give you the right width of the stitch, the right size of the stitch. Then keep repeating these instructions for every 2 consecutive stitches on the front and the left needle. So insert, my stitches could be turned, so be careful. There, this is the right position. But just make sure that you will insert the right hand needle into the front left needle, insert it into the first stitch knitwise, then insert the right hand needle into the stitch on the back left needle knitwise, knit 2 stitches together, slip them off. And now slip the second stitch on the right needle over the first stitch, or pass it over. And now we're going to keep repeating these instructions. We will be inserting the right needle into the first stitch on the front left needle, then into the first stitch on the left back needle, knitting 2 together, releasing those stitches, slipping them off both needles, and then passing the second stitch over the first stitch on the right needle. That's from the tip of the needle. Keep going like that until you get closer to the stitch markers, and I will show you what to do with that last stitch that we will have left over. The same directions are given in the pattern itself. I will guide you through there if you don't have access to the video tutorials, although with nowadays technology I think everyone does. So see, it creates a looser bind off when you do it with a larger size needle, and it will not create that tightened effect at the seam. So we're just creating a seam, and this is what it looks like on the right side. Okay, I'll meet you there at the stitch marker. I have the very last stitch on the right needle. All I'm going to do is slip it onto the front needle, front left needle. I have this little piece of yarn left, which is great. And then we'll move on to the second sleeve and do the same thing here. So I'm going to disconnect my little stopper. I will remove the needle from that end and place it onto this one. Prep the same way. I do have my stitch marker stitch markers. I do have my stitch markers right here. These mushrooms let me know when to stop 3 needle bind off. We start the same way. I'll meet you here. Just follow the same directions. Align the stitches, start binding off, and I will meet you here. This will be the beginning of the round because we will be joining work in the round. And this is where I have my working yarn. These I wind by hand. I just like to do that sometimes. So until these 2 markers, we'll meet again. The right sleeve is almost finished. This is the seam that I've created. I am on the wrong side. And this is the last stitch. Now remove your stitch markers. Let's fix this. And slip the stitch off of the right, the very last stitch, before we start joining in the round. Slip the stitch onto the right needle. Put this needle away. You're not going to need that larger one anymore. This will be the beginning of the round. What you do right now is we still have 2 needles, or a needle and a cable, what have you. So we need to be on the right side of the sweater. So that's the right side of the sleeve, the right sleeve, and this is the seam. That's what it looks like on the right side, and that's the left sleeve. This is the beginning of the work in a round. So the sleeve is ready to go, ready to be blocked, and the seam creates stability and structure, and that's what we like. So this is the beginning of my round. The beginning of the round, it doesn't matter what this will be like, whether you have the needles. I am too lazy, I don't want to switch from the flexi cable and this little fix-it that I have, I can work with the dull end or the wrong end of the needle. So that's okay. I will not need this tip here because I will need this one. I will need this one on the other side. So this one I can easily take off and attach it to a shorter cable that I will be working the body of the sweater with. And it's anywhere from 24 to 32-inch cable, anything that you feel comfortable working with. That will be the work on the round, in the round for the body of the sweater. I don't need a stopper at this point. I will control the stitches so they will not slide off. Let's begin work on the body. Here's something extremely important that you need to know before you start working on it. Whichever row of the pattern that you ended on, whether it was row number 4 or 8, make sure you continue from there. Otherwise, your pattern will not be offset in the right way and you will have a bad continuation because it's always offset. So every other row, we offset the eyelets. So that's what we're gonna do. This stitch is, so the yarn was twisted. The yarn, see, it's twisted around the stitch. So let me move the yarn and position it the right way and push the stitch back onto the needle. Move the stitch back onto the needle. We are not placing the beginning of the round marker yet. It's useless. The stitches are open and we have 2 cables. What we're doing right now is basically working continuing working with the pattern. Just make sure you're on the right row. You're continuing from the row that you ended work for the sleeves. Start working from that row or the next row. And surprise, surprise, it will be just knit stitches for this row, or round, should I say. So start working. It's just knit stitches. I've just worked my first round and I'm about to place the beginning of the round marker on my right needle and continue working in a round. Switch to work from lace pattern chart worked flat to lace pattern chart worked in a round, and continue with the row, or at this point it'll be round, that you left off when you were working on the sleeves. What does it mean? It means that when you look at your pattern, you can figure it out like this if you memorize the pattern by now. So the 3 stitches, you will have to make the yarn over between these 3 stitches. So the yarn over will be offset on the next row. So between these 3 stitches, there will be a yarn over. Between these 3 stitches, there will be a yarn over. Between these yarn overs. So in the beginning of the round, I worked rows 1 through 4 here while I was working flat. So I'm continuing with round number 5. Well, actually, that's what I just did. So I'm on round number 6. And if I were to just place the stitch marker, the beginning of the round stitch marker here and continue working, either I would have to slip these stitches or do something with them. What do I do with them? This is where the only time in a round you will have to maneuver this stitch marker and move it back and forth. So the last stitch that we just knit of the round, on those rounds when you do yarn overs, actually on the round number 6, do not work the very last stitch of the round. Start working your pattern from if this is the round number 6. Round number 2, you're okay. You will just start working from where the stitch marker would have been right now without the stitch. Just work the stitch normally and then work the pattern. So for those who are on round number 6, what do? Do not work the very last stitch. Let me just do it this way so it'll be more visually more understandable. So this, your round looks like this, right? This is the very last stitch before the beginning of the round stitch marker. Remove it. You already have that stitch. Do not work it. Now, knit this stitch, the next stitch, pass the last stitch of the round, or the second stitch on the right needle at this point, over the first. Place beginning of the round stitch marker on your right needle, knit 2 together, double yarn over. We decreased 1 stitch out of 3, and then the yarn over goes right after it on those offset rounds on round number 6. Keep going to the end of the round and then work your stockinette stitch for 3 rounds. That's how the pattern goes. Double yarn over, double yarn over. So a few of the 3-stitch repeats completed, and this is the beginning of our round. When we will come back to it and knit for 3 rounds all of these stitches, you will see that the yarn over is right here at the beginning, ready for us to do the yarn over and then decrease. And this way you will know how to check where to offset the pattern by 1. So I hope it's understandable. Check the pattern. There are more tips and tricks there, and follow this. And there it is. I will come back to you when I do all of my repeats suggested in the pattern. If you want it longer, extended by 4 round repeat, and just make it as long as you want to. Just keep in mind that there will be 2 inches of a garter stitch knit with much smaller needles than this. And also, if you do not want it as deep, that garter stitch, just make it shorter or longer. It's up to you, whatever you want. You can actually work the recommended number of repeats for the lace pattern, and then just extend the garter stitch. Instead of 2 inches, just work 4 or 5, whatever you want. You can make it into a very long sweater dress kind of thing. All right, I'll come back and show you the transition to the garter stitch. I have finished the top and the portion for the body that was worked in around, and I have finished the garter stitch trim at the bottom. So what's left to do here is, let me take the stitch marker off, is to bind off. Use any stretchy bind off that you prefer, or I will show you mine. This one is very unusual. For this, you will have to measure 3 lengths of the circumference of the bottom trim, stretched so you have enough yarn, and the thread, and a tapestry needle, thread, tapestry needle. You will need 2 stitch markers. You will place those removable stitch markers into the first stitch on the left needle, like that. Lighter ones so they don't stretch out the needles. And the second one you will place into the second stitch on the left needle, like that. You can move them to the back of the work so they're out of the way. Now with the needle, just insert the needle into the first 3 stitches, go into the front of the work, and pull the yarn through. This end is a little bit long, but when we get to the end it'll be shorter, of course. Okay, tighten it up a bit and slip the first stitch off the needle. Insert the needle into the next 3 stitches on the left needle and pull it through. Don't pull it tightly, but wiggle it through and stretch it out a bit. I'll show you. Slip the first stitch from the tip of the left needle off. There we go. Leaving the 2 of them on and kind of just stretch it out a bit. We will need these 2. We'll come back to them. Keep going like that. Inserting the needle into 3 stitches, pulling the yarn through. You can actually release the first one off the needle, slip it off the needle at this point. And now you see what's happening there. And again, just wiggle it through so the stitches kind of distribute evenly. And keep going like that. And this turns out to be the stretchiest bind off that I found out. And if you don't have the 1x1 rib, where you can do a tubular bind off. So this is what's happening. Just repeat the same instructions until the end of the round, and I'll come back with the last few stitches and show you what to do with these. So one more time. Insert the needle into 3 stitches, pull the yarn through, slip the first stitch from the tip of the needle off, wiggle it a little bit, and that's what it is. If you want your edge to look like this, then what you do is when you insert the needle, don't bring it to the front, bring it to the back of the work, pull it through and keep going like that through the back. Then your stitches here will look like that, which for some might be preferable edge. So there it is, and I'll come back and show you how to finish it. I bound off almost all of the stitches of the bottom trim. I have 2 left. I need 3 to be able to perform my little wraparound stitch maneuver. These were the 2 original stitches. Because we wrap the yarn around every stitch twice. Well, first we get through it and then we wrap around. So these 2 stitches were not wrapped around. What we need to do is basically, I am going to put them back on the needle like that. So we have last 4 stitches, and then we can just weave the end in. I will remove the stitch markers. And we just continue. Let's just do it this way. Slip this off. I just found out it's easier like this. There we go. And that will close up that space. This is where the join was, the beginning of the round. And we can just weave that in. So basically this is it. Okay. Now just all that's left, just weave in the end and block it. And then I will cast on the stitches for the sleeve trim. And we're done. I'm getting ready to cast on for the sleeve trim. I will be using magic loop method. I have a smaller size needles fitted with a 40-inch cable. And the way I will do it is I will join the new skein of yarn. The sleeves are, so this is the seam of the sleeve. This is the second sleeve. So I'll be casting on from the seam towards the middle of the sleeve, just half stitches, and then half stitches for this sleeve. It will be all done at the same time, and then I'll turn work and cast on the second half. So I am going to join the first skein of yarn to the first sleeve. I need to cast on 40 stitches total for each sleeve. So on each side of the needle, there will be 20 stitches. The first skein of yarn I will join here, and I will start casting on stitches. So approximately into this row here. And probably every other stitch. I'm gauging it will be probably 10 stitches to this point and 10 stitches to the middle, somewhere like that. This is the only guesswork that you have to do, and it's at the sleeve trim, not somewhere at the near the shoulder at the top or something like that. So that's 8, 9, 10. Good enough. And the same probably distance from each stitch, 10 more. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. So that's the first. And I know this is the middle because, you know, the rowing out happened. And this is where I joined the yarn. So I could have actually skipped the stitch here because I did it almost in every stitch and just continue with the same interval. There we go. Definitely half based on this piece of yarn. All right, let's join the second skein of yarn. The second skein ball of yarn, we're joining to the second sleeve on the same needle. So again, 20 stitches for this side. Okay, now turn work. Slide the needle through. And let's cast on the rest of the stitches. That's that. And now the last 20 stitches for my size. Okay, all of the stitches on the needles, and we can start working the first round for both sleeves. First things first, arrange it on the needles. Make sure this yarn is secured. And then I'll weave the end in and start working one by one rib. Work it for the depth that you prefer or want to, or to whatever the pattern suggests. As always, I would say check the pattern. Wet block the sweater before you do this because the sleeve stretches out quite a bit. By this time, I already know what it will be, so it's okay that I didn't block it, wet block it, but please do so. It will alleviate a lot of problems of very long sleeves or short sleeves. So magic loop, it's magic. Keep on working and rib, and then bind the stitches off with your favorite bind off. Whether it's a tubular bind off or just regular, make sure it's just not too tight, but use your preferred method. So that's half of the first row. Try to work. And finish setting up. Tighten up here so you won't have a jog. Or ladder. Continue working like that, and we will be done with the sweater soon. What are all of these? These are just a few of the samples of Sassy Sweater. While I'm all in black, I'm going to show you the progression of some of them because the rest are still drying. you will see the differences and you will see the final result. So this one was the first one. I was at Edinburgh Ginger Twist Studios, and I found this yarn. This is Aran Weight, and you can see it's chunkier. At that point, I wanted a wider neckline, and it's not as wide anymore. And also, if you can see, it's cropped. And this was the original design before I decided to change it up a little bit. You can still finish it this way, which is 1x1 rib with the bound off. So this one, you can tell it still sits pretty nice there, and it's shaped here a little bit to give you that curve, but it's really wide. So if you want that kind of off the shoulder look or a little wider neck look, this is just follow the pattern. It'll give you the wider neck look, but avoid the seam that I included in the final. So this is what it is. It's just cropped sweater, boxy, a little oversized. You can throw it on top of anything. So right now I'm just wearing my normal, regular, at home, COVID kind of sporty look. So this just elevates it, and you can wear it with high-waisted jeans, skirts with maybe a little like cami or like crew neck or turtleneck on the top of it, and then this on top of that. So this will give you warmth. This one was the first design, and the patterns will be, the yarns will be listed in the patterns. Just follow the pattern and video tutorial. So, all right, next one. Next one was the Rewa. This one is Harmony. This one is yak and cashmere, and beautiful, beautiful blend. So that one was alpaca and silk. This one is still pretty warm. This one still followed that wider neckline. And I didn't have enough yarn, so I couldn't finish it. I just really crocheted the very edge, and that's it. So this one is slightly a little longer than 3/4 sleeve, but I still didn't finish. This one was still 1x1 rib and wider neckline. So I wanted to fix that because I wanted to bring it up a little bit, and I wanted to for it to be not as wide. So the next ones, or the final version, will not be as wide of a neckline opening as this one. So that's it. And you can just keep on working either the lace design, or it's finished in the final pattern with the garter stitch. So just extend the lace a little bit lower if you want it lower, if that's the way you prefer to wear it. I like it cropped most of the time, but sometimes I do prefer something longer than that. So this is the second one, still shaped at the front neckline a little deeper than at the back. The difference in here was about 1.5 inches, which is not enough. So I dipped it further in the latest designs, and it will be like 2.5 inches difference between the back and the front. So this is one of them. And I like this because it doesn't snag. With a lacy design, sometimes you just get caught and stuff and just pull stitches, and I don't like it. So that's that, and it's finished. I have my logo in here. So this one's done. And then, so to make it more interesting, this one is Ritual Dyes Yarns, and this is their cotton linen blend. It's not quite finished yet, but this was the jewel weed color. That actually is not, it's not as bright as it looks actually. It's more orangey here. This one is redder the way it shows up. And that's what I liked when I looked on the website when I chose the yarn. So this one, you can tell that the neckline is not as wide because of the neckline seam right here. It's very hard to stretch. So it will stay like that all the time, no matter what you do with it, no matter how many times you wash it. It's just what it is. It's gonna be like that. So it's shaped a little bit deeper, not as wide neckline. And you can see that at the back, it's just shaped the right way. In my next sweaters, I will make the I will make that curve deeper, but I like it this way. So there it is. Longer sleeve. This one I had enough yarn. So what you do is you work flat from sleeve to sleeve, shaping this. You can tell that this is short rows. All of these are short rows. And as you go, your main pattern, lace pattern, starts from neckline to neckline. And then you have stitch markers here to show you where you're at. And then you just keep on adding to that pattern on the side, and you go back and forth. And it doesn't matter how you add it. When you, it's just up to you. I don't hold your hand there. I just let you do your stuff and just keep extending the pattern onto the sleeve, each sleeve. So it's just the way it is. Just implement that pattern. I will tell you how exactly, but this is what it is. So, and then you extend it, but this removes that curve, removes that extra bulk from here. And that's what I like. So you can see the shape of it, right? This is what I decided to finish it. I finished it with garter stitch, and I will show you how I bound off. I like this bind off. It's done with the needle. Each 3 stitches, I will show you that in the video because this is one of my favorite bind offs at this moment. So there it is. That's how it looks. And I do have, so this is a lighter one. It doesn't give you warmth. It's just something to throw on the top, summertime or like chillier weather, maybe in the evening, just to elevate your look. Maybe with shorts, maybe with a little bit of, with a dress, long skirt. It will look great with longer skirt with some pockets. It'll be really amazing. And a little cami underneath. So that's that. The next one will be made out of linen, wool, and silk blend from Shibui Knits. That'll be a blue one. And the one that I will record this video tutorial with will be Ginger Twist Studios wool and silk blend.